Hello, I'd like to welcome you to William Smith's portfolio done via video for EDUC 4057 or my Phase 4 experience. So for this first video, I'm going to be looking at the Texas Education Standards, and I'm going to be looking at Standard number 1, which I'll read. Standard 1 is the instructional planning and delivery. Teachers demonstrate their understanding of instructional planning by providing standards-based, data-driven, differentiated instruction that engages students, makes appropriate use of technology, and makes learning relevant for today's learners. Now, going through all these different standards, there's a couple that stood out to me as I've gone about over 3 weeks now into my field experience. One of those was A2, which says teachers effectively communicate goals, expectations, objectives to help students reach higher levels of achievement. This is something I've learned from my cooperating teacher, Ms. Nick, as well as other past teachers, that stating goals and objectives is a vital part of the classroom. And so here I have an example of one of my lesson plans I did last Wednesday when I taught a lesson, but my teacher, Ms. Nick, has the objectives and big ideas stated each and every single day in a PowerPoint, and the class reads it together every single day. And so I followed that example when I taught last Wednesday. So last Wednesday, the big idea was physical geography in the American colonies affected settlement and economic patterns in the region. And the objective was I can analyze how physical characteristics of the environment influence population distribution, settlement patterns in the United States during the 17th, 18th, and 19th century, although we were only looking at the 17th century at this time. But the students knew this going into the lesson, that this was the objective and this was the big idea for the day before even the instructions were carried out. So connecting these ideas of what we're going to learn and why it's important and how it's going to connect into tomorrow and the next day and all into the big picture, I think is very important for these students to know. And I'm glad that I've had so many people demonstrate this, and so that I know to do this in my future classroom. So another part of the standard 1 that I mentioned before that stood out to me was B3. It says, teachers use and adapt resources, technologies, and standards-aligned instructional materials to promote student success in meeting learning goals. Something else I've learned and put into effect myself this semester is just how many resources out there for students and how you can utilize it. Especially at Bullard Middle School, it's a one-to-one school with technology. Every student has their own personal computer, and so the resources are unlimited with this technology. But there's also other resources we use, and there's just so many. But they mostly use Google Classroom, and everything's connected through Google Classroom and their Google Drives. But we also have everything's lined up. We have Quizlet. We use Quizlet. We use Guru to keep track. That's connected to the TEKS, our TEKS, and that's a good way to keep data driven. And so, using this every single day, this digital interactive notebook, keeping up through Google, constantly have vocabulary checks with bell ringers, having questions come in to assess where the students are, providing charts, graphs, physical materials as well, I think really helps the students meet their goals, and they're learning a lot, and they're actually engaged in the classroom because all the students sit in group. So we do a lot of group work in this classroom in pairs or at tables, and all the materials we provide and all the interactions the student get to have, I think, really makes a difference in their learning. And I think that's something that's being done well in this particular classroom that I'm in at Bullard Middle School. Another one that stood out to me and part of the standard 1 was C3. It says teachers integrate the use of oral, written, graphic, kinesthetic, or tactile methods to teach key concepts. This is something my cooperating teacher, Miss Nick, does extremely well, and she even mentioned to me on maybe my second or third day of school. She said my teaching philosophy is to incorporate the ELP standards into every single classroom. Now the ELP standards, you got to check listening skills, speaking, reading, and writing. And so she says she likes to do this for every single student in the classroom. So every day all students are going to have a chance to listen. That's the easy one because the teacher is going to be directing instruction. Even if the students do most of the work of the day, the teacher still directs the instruction. But you want to give a student a chance to speak out. So this is involved by asking questions, doing formative assessment via questioning, checking understanding via questioning. And so questioning is a big deal. It's something I'm growing in, learning how to do, and I'm glad to have a master teacher to learn from all this teaching. But she also gives students a chance to read every day. This is usually digitally. We read all sorts of primary sources, all sorts of secondary sources. We do have handouts we read as well when we're working, but we do read a lot. And they also write a lot, and this is all usually they're writing in their notebooks. Usually the bell ringer, they have sometimes have to do a writing activity, write down a person or a card they got, pull up the key ideas, have a paragraph. And so this is something I think that's being done very well. And so I think this is a great method to follow the ELP standards and try to give students a chance to listen, speak, read, and write every single class period. Give as many students the chance to use all 4 of those if possible, because I think it really engages and makes a difference in the classroom. And the last point I wanted to talk about today is part of the standard 1 is E3. Teachers incorporate technology that allows students to interact with the curriculum in a more significant and effective way, helping them reach mastery. I talked about technology a little bit earlier, but I wanted to go into even more detail now. This is what a standard computer looks like at Bullard Middle School. So each student has this Chromebook. This is one, and they all have to carry this around every single day, and they got a charger in here, and so everything is one-to-one. Everything, and this, we focus on technology, especially in the history classes. I know the history department is very well in this school in use of technology. But I mentioned some of the stuff we used, but there's even more. There's quizzes, beyond just Quizlet. Quizzes, we can use that to quiz students. You can connect that to Quizlet and all sorts of fun things. You can do Quizlet Live, which is a fun game type thing where students can interact with each other in a fun way to test their knowledge over vocabulary terms. I mentioned Guru earlier. That's based on the TEKS and it's connected to the TEKS, so that's a really good way to assess students and keep track of data. We use something today called Padlet where students can type in information and they can see it from every single period what the other students typed, and so they could all review these cards that they got and handed in the classroom of people, and they had to pull out the key ideas, and then they can go through all the different classes and see all the key ideas of these people to help them study for a quiz of over important people in the early colonial period, as we've been talking about. There's Kahoots, that's a fun game, and there's so many more. She was just showing me on Friday this program that allows you to do videos just like I'm doing, but it's only going to be about 2 minutes. And so students who don't necessarily like to speak for the classroom, they can all make their own little 1 to 2 minute video explaining something. Then the students come in and comment on that, and they can comment, or they can, I don't know if they can leave other videos, but I forgot what that one's called, but she was just blowing me away with all this new stuff. There's so much stuff you can do that's connected to through Google Classroom, and I wish I could show you but what one of these notebooks looks like. Unfortunately, I do not have access since I'm not in the Bullard system, and Google Classroom is actually very secured, which is a good thing. I wish I could show you what one of their students' notebooks looks like, because it is just very impressive. And this school is incorporated technology in such a way that has really just opened my eyes to what technology can do. And I really am looking forward to. I've learned so much just in 3 weeks to see how this technology plays a big role. This is probably one of the biggest and most important things I've seen. And it's really one of the biggest things that I've enjoyed so far, is learning all this new technology. And I hope someday I can be in a school, particularly like this one, this one-to-one, just because I have learned now and seen all the different possibilities technology opens up in the classroom and how much it can really engage students. And combining that with student interaction with technology is just an excellent combo. So those are just some things I've learned going back over the first standard, and I'm just excited to continue to keep learning. And I think that's about all I have, and so I will sign off now, and hopefully we'll learn some more about some of the stuff I talked about in the future. I'm sure I will, because there's still plenty more weeks to go.